Hello friends, welcome to Block Bytes. Of all the notable developments happening in the Cardano ecosystem, one is particularly interesting. We witnessed the crypto crash of last year, which was triggered by the collapse of the TerraUSD Luna ecosystem. For most of us in this space, this event proved that algorithmic stablecoins are bound to collapse and will never be a reality again, until Cardano announced the creation of its own algorithmic stablecoin. Charles Hoskinson and Shahaf Bar Geffen announced at the Cardano summit that the COTI platform will be the official issuer of Djed, a new Cardano stablecoin. The name is taken from an ancient Egyptian symbol, which looks like a pillar and represents stability. COTI is a layer 1 blockchain optimized explicitly for creating digital payment systems and stablecoins. Let's start with a brief primer on stablecoins. A stablecoin is a cryptocurrency whose value is determined by a more stable asset. The value of stablecoins is closely or commonly associated with fiat currencies such as the US dollar, but it can also be linked to precious metals like gold or other cryptocurrencies. Stable coins represent actual fiat currencies in the crypto world and are used as currency to trade in crypto assets. But to do that, a stablecoin must have a stable value, which is very difficult since crypto tokens are volatile. Let's take the example of USDC, a stablecoin issued by Circle. 1 USDC is equivalent to $1 US. This equivalence in value is maintained by something called a peg. Now, there are different mechanisms that stablecoins can employ to maintain this peg. The simplest one is having a reserve equal to the number of stablecoins in circulation. For example, suppose there are 1 million USDC coins circulating around the crypto ecosystem. In that case, there must be $1 million US in a bank backing these up to maintain that 1-to-1 peg. But as you might have imagined, having an intermediary introduces centralization, as the maintenance of the stability falls on the shoulder of Circle, a private enterprise. And this goes against the basic tenet of decentralization. Since everything is on the public blockchain, baked inside smart contracts, why can't this stability mechanism be automated in these contracts too? Enter algorithmic stablecoins. In the case of algorithmic stablecoins, maintaining the peg is automated using code in smart contracts. They employ an algorithm that can issue more coins when the price rises and purchase them off the market when the price falls. So how does Djed work? Djed is backed by ADA, the native token of Cardano. To mint the Djed stablecoin, users must engage with the smart contract by transferring ADA to its address and will get Djed in return. Djed's price will aspire to be $1. If a user wants to buy 1 Djed, they deposit $1 worth of ADA tokens into the smart contract, and they want to sell it, they get their ADA back. There is also a supporting mechanism to address the fluctuation in the price of the ADA token. The Shen token is what will provide this support. Shen tokens will ensure that collateral in the system, or rather there is enough collateral in the system to cover all the Djed coins in circulation in case the price of ADA falls to extreme lows. Another thing to know is that the reserve, which is Shen, does not cover all Djed tokens in a 1-to-1 ratio, but in a 1-to-4 and a 1-to-8 ratio. In other words, for every Djed, there will be a minimum of 4 to a maximum of 8 ADA tokens backing it up. This is why it is called a over-collateralized stablecoin. However, the fall of USD Terra's algorithmic stablecoin, which resulted in the 2022 crypto market crash, is a harsh reminder that there are massive downsides to having another algorithmic stablecoin in the cryptoverse. But that doesn't seem to bother Cardano. According to an article published last year, aptly named Djed is not TerraUSD, there are several reasons why Djed is different. Number one, USD had no reserve coin between itself and the collateral. It maintained its peg due to a perpetual arbitrage between USD and the native token Luna. This constant minting and burning of USD and Luna ensured the stability of the peg. In the case of Djed, the peg is maintained by the reserve Shen tokens and not directly by ADA. Shen takes the volatility in price ADA might experience like Luna away from the equation, making it more stable to fluctuations. In other words, all the risks that Luna was exposed to are transferred to Shen in the case of Djed. There is a difference between Luna and ADA. Luna, the native token on Terra, duped people into thinking that it had a lot of underlying value by artificially inflating this price, or rather artificially inflating their price, thanks to the 20% yield provided on the Anchor protocol. However, this is different from ADA. The ADA token is thriving, having been used as a security token for thousands of dApps on Cardano. And so unlike Luna, if there is a selling pressure on Djed, Cardano expects that the investors will not simply start selling ADA. USD and Luna got entangled in a death spiral, ultimately leading to their demise. In the case of Djed, a boundary condition of 400 to 800% limits the minting and burning of tokens, making death spiral an impossibility. And finally, USD and Luna were pegged one by one, whereas Djed is over-collateralized 4 to 8 times. This is another big difference, as Terra did not have enough reserves and was ultimately left scrambling to generate liquidity to ward off the selling pressure. COTI and Djed have covered all the bases with their design. However, the overall sentiment around algorithmic stablecoins is unfavorable. The stablecoin will be live in a few weeks, according to this latest statement by them. There are two things I am mainly looking for. Now, I have to say that I have the utmost respect for the Cardano community. Still, since the Cardano ecosystem is not very big on DeFi at the moment, compared to some of the well-known EVM chains, this algorithm will not be tested as rigorously as it was in USD. But since COTI is already making an EVM compatible version, some of the larger EVM compatible chains like BSC, Phantom, or even Ethereum would be the real test for their design. But I'm not sure if any of these chains would be open to the idea of having an algorithmic stablecoin. The second thing is scalability. COTI is not technically a blockchain, but a graph. If it were a blockchain, then at least there was the scope of it becoming a layer 3 app chain on top of Ethereum. How COTI intends to address decentralization and scalability will also be interesting to see. I hope you like this video. Thanks a lot for watching. Please share and like this video, and I will see you next time with another fresh bite. Bye-bye.